Welcome back to my little YouTube channel. Today I'm going to be bringing to you my third true crime video, and I decided for this video to cover two smaller cases. That was for two smaller cases because I have like a list on my phone of cases, usually German cases, and I looked one up and I couldn't find really anything on it. It was barely any information, and it was still important to me to talk about, so I figured I'll just put two smaller cases with less information out there in this video. So that's what we're going to do today, and I would say let's get right into the video. The first case for today is called Screams from the Apartment, the 1992 murder of Jana Kyselova. And I hope I said that last name right. It's a Polish name, I think. The case was actually titled Screams from the Apartment in the German press back then. I did not make that name up for dramatic effect. That was actually what it was referred to. And it happened on a Thursday, the 8th of September 1992 in Cologne. Screams can be heard from the apartment of 21-year-old Jana Kyselova on Kyffhäuser Street. Jana was working as a prostitute at the time of the crime and was later found dead in her apartment by police. She was stabbed 19 times, which is kind of an overkill, and made me wonder if it was a personal act or basically just hatred for women or prostitutes in general. Witnesses at the time claimed to have seen an unidentified male quickly leaving the house in which Jana lived. Could that have been the killer and her last client? There is also supposedly a culprit description and composite sketch, but still to this day, 27 years later, there was no arrest in the case. Police back then believed the culprit, due to the description, could be part of the military, or they're pretty sure to this day still. And also evidence left behind and things left behind at the crime scene also led them to believe that the culprit was a military man, which also made me question what was left behind, what evidence did they find, what items did they find that made them believe that, and was there any evidence of sexual activity before she was killed, which would also obviously explain if it was in fact a client of hers or not. Now, this is literally all the information I could find on this case online. This case, because of that reason, really upset me, so I'm going to go into a little rant here now. I could not find any other articles on this case. I literally found two articles that were like this big, and I tried different search terms and I still could not find anything else. I also know that the case was aired on a TV show, and the TV show I mentioned in the last case I did of the Unsolved Murders. It's kind of similar to Crime Watch. And I could not for the life of me find this episode. I tried everything. I know what episode it is. I know it's episode 251. I know that it aired on the 4th of December 1992. And I can't find it. I tried everything. I tried Googling everything. I tried looking on different websites. I signed up for different websites. I downloaded apps. And I cannot find it. I found it on YouTube actually. And it's copyrighted. And I cannot watch it. So I got so frustrated, but Jana's case is still important and she's still important, so I wanted to cover it anyway. And the thing is that upset me so much is that because of that I could not even find the culprit description or the composite sketch whatsoever. I couldn't find it anywhere. I also only found one picture of Jana herself on a site called Sex Industry Kills, and that's also so upsetting that there's nothing. Like, the issue is that I feel like the reasoning behind all of this is kind of that she was a prostitute. her profession, because I've noticed on different cases that as soon as the person isn't the perfect angel, or they take drugs, or they work as a sex worker, the profession, or they have a mental illness, the case suddenly doesn't seem as important to some people. And I think that's really sick, because these are still people and a profession shouldn't matter. She was murdered. No matter what profession she was working at the time, nobody deserves to die like that. And she was only 21 years old. She's only 1 year younger than I am right now, and that is insane to me. She did not deserve to die like that, no matter what her profession was. That doesn't make her less of a person, and nobody should be allowed to get away with this just because she was working as a sex worker. It's ridiculous, and it really upset me. And that's why, even though I couldn't find a lot, I decided to still talk about this, because this is important. And I want people to hear this. Even if the case might not have that high of a chance to be solved still, because it's pretty old, and like I said, there isn't much out there, Jana still deserves her story to be told, because she can't tell it herself anymore, so I will. The second case is the unsolved murder of Marcel B in 2007. On the 20th of June 2007, 36-year-old Marcel B was found dead on his outdoor steps of his house. It was in Euskirchen, Plankenheim Rohr, and he is a family man and a father. Now, the interesting fact that he was found on his outdoor steps made me kind of question the outlay of the house. I would really like to know that. Like, were they in a backyard, or how were they covered from sight that nobody saw him earlier? Because he was later found by people coming to visit him. His throat had been cut by a supposedly unknown man, and witnesses at the time described the scene as a bloodbath. The scene also really confused police and led him to a lot of questions. And even after an intense investigation, to this day there is still no murder weapon found. And the case is still unsolved 12 years later. And as of 2019, the case seems cold, but that could only be my opinion, because I couldn't find any new articles on the case, but it could obviously still be open. The case did get revisited in 2012 after it had been cold for 5 years. So the case had been cold since 2007 to 2012. Through new methods and findings, the case was even supposed to go to court back then. And a central point of the case and investigation back then already was the time of death of Marcel. Although witnesses were saying that he must have died 1.5 days before he was discovered, which also led me to wonder why they would say that. Like, did they see him, or because they didn't see him, if it was a neighborhood, because they didn't see him for that time, they figured that he must have been dead already? I don't know. Police in general was very quiet and secretive about this case for a long time, so they didn't want to give out any information that only the culprit would know of. And I can quote that: "We continued to keep investigating," attorney Robert Deller said. Already back in 2007, they did have a main suspect in a 29-year-old man. I could not find a name on that person. I'm considering, because he wasn't charged with anything, they're not giving out his identity. And I also couldn't find why he was a suspect, though I would really like to know why they did suspect him of doing that, if he had a motive or a reason, or if he was seen. That would be very interesting. But as far as I know, he was also actually held for a time by police, but they couldn't hold him because he did have an alibi for the supposed time of Marcel's death. So they couldn't prove that he had anything to do with it. I believe that he is still their main suspect to this day, though. And like I said, there were new methods and new findings. And these new methods and findings actually brought up a different time of death. So that the original time of death of Marcel was wrong, and that means that the suspect's alibi doesn't stand anymore. And that's why they thought with the new time of death combined with other evidence that they found, they could bring this case to court and solve it. The prosecution Aachen wanted to bring the case to court and actually solve it and arrest their suspect. I'm going to have to look down a little bit more because this is a lot of court and law stuff right now and I just can't remember that. So the prosecution in Aachen wanted to bring the case to court, but the district court of Aachen didn't agree with their findings, that they didn't agree that they had enough evidence and proof to bring this actually to court, so the prosecution had to put in a complaint to the higher regional court in Cologne. And they, back then in 2012, they said that they assumed that they would have a verdict in a few weeks, rather they could actually bring this case to court or not. Like I said, that was in 2012 though, and since then I could not find any news on the case. The last article that I could find, the newest one, was from 2013, and I don't know what the verdict was. I'm guessing that they weren't allowed to bring it to court, considering that I haven't heard of anything about this topic anymore and I couldn't find new articles. So that sucks, but I do believe in this case very much so. I mean, I hope that the first case that I talked about today can be solved too, but in this case I do believe 100% that this case is solvable. I really do. I just think that Marcel was a family man and a father, and he obviously deserves justice, and so does his family and his children. And nobody deserves to die like this either. This was a brutal murder and nobody should get away with it. I do believe that this case is very much solvable, because I think that if they did have that main suspect back then already and they had kind of evidence, because they were talking about evidence and they must have had a reason to suspect this person, that he had something to do with it, just that the time of death was in their way, but now the time of death actually fits with a time that he isn't accounted for. I do believe that they must have a reason, and I really think that he probably is actually a person who did it, because I don't know, they wanted to bring it to court, so they must have been very sure of themselves. And I don't know, I wish it could be brought to court, like just so that it could go to trial, that it could stand a chance of going to trial, and because Marcel deserves that. So I also do not know Marcel B's last name. He was only mentioned as Marcel B. And I could also not find a picture of him. I'm guessing that's the family's wish, and I will respect that obviously, so I don't have a picture to put up of him. But like I said, I would really love to see this case go to trial and actually have a chance of justice, and I think it's really solvable. And I also hope, of course, justice for Jana could be brought as well. So that's all I have for you today. Like I said, 2 smaller cases. This video isn't as long, but small cases still matter, and I see you next time. So stay safe and have a good day. Bye.